Hello, dear listener, and welcome to another episode of Jeremiad, the podcast that no one needed, and yet in your face, we thrust it. Hi, Tom. Do tell us, what are we discussing today?
Hi, Andy. So today, yes, we're going to be discussing what we've termed corporate altruism, which is effectively this sort of phenomena of companies, corporations, conglomerates cleaning their image through charities, through activism, through sort of various altruistic endeavors that on the face is like this company's doing a good thing, they're donating, but really behind it all is this sinister self-preservation that the companies are using charities, using activist causes as a front basically to just keep their image clean, whilst with one hand they're donating to charity and another hand they're doing some evil corporate shit, because most corporations have some kind of evil, twisted, dark element to them. It is something that's probably been touched upon a lot, but has it been Jeremiad?
Well, I believe it hasn't, and I believe that's why we're sat here today. And it is something that this day and age, it's so commonplace, it's such well-established habit that you almost become desensitized to it as a public. And I feel that people do get swept up in the notion. And I think that quite often what happens is companies, they're very coy with their approach, with their marketing, for example. And what they will often do is appease right to the conscience of the consumer and almost throw off your judgment. When you think about it on a company perspective, a profit-driven business, it is very sinister. That is the word, yes.
Yeah, because the idea has sprouted from a bunch of bigwigs and suits in a boardroom trying to increase next quarter's profits.
Yeah.
Trying to kind of create a strategy which plays on people's emotions and their personal experiences as well. You know, they will rake up for a lot of people, personal things. Call us cynics, you know, but I think they're the cynics.
It's not strictly charity causes. There is a various spate of ways that companies will try and manifest this festering insolence. First of all, I do have one example. Now, for legal reasons, I may redact the names of companies involved, and I'll tell you for why. For why, this is an incident I became aware of at my current job. There is a company that we work with that provide certain packaging solutions, okay? So they've launched a new range of products that are Christmas themed in the sense that the product is exactly the same as it normally is, but it has Christmas decoration on it. That's a quick win, isn't it? Starbucks do it all the time. You know, Starbucks are the archetypal. Every little company must look at them and think, yes, the Starbucks model, great. They color code their cups Christmas themed at Christmas time.
You're not tempted by like a gingerbread spice latte?
Well, that in itself really annoys me, and that could probably be another Jeremiad all on its own, because have you ever actually tried one of those beverages? The one that always annoys me is the pumpkin spice latte, because I love pumpkin, I love a bit of spice, I don't mind a latte, but it never actually tastes that. I'm convinced that all they're actually doing there is creating a latte, but they've marketed it as pumpkin spice, put those two buzzwords on it, and yanked up the price.
It's like a placebo effect, isn't it?
Massively. But every single year, you know, independent retailers do it as well, but everyone falls for it. Everyone does. That's crazy.
I don't think there is actually any pumpkin in pumpkin spice. I think it's the spices that are traditionally used in like a pumpkin pie. So there is actually no pumpkin in it. It's just
but you see,
pumpkin
I'm
spice.
a big
so
fan
it's like cinnamon and nutmeg and things like that.
I'm a big fan of pumpkin pie, pumpkin soup. Maybe that's the problem, is it brings back nostalgic memories and I'm trying to unlock them and I can't through a shallow commodified coffee, but that's tugging at something deeper. So this company released a new range of Christmas themed products, and for every one we sell, we donate 10% of the profits to a charity that work with and for homeless people. Obviously, that's quite topical throughout the winter when, as we've experienced today, we're recording this episode in November, it's bloody cold in Britain. But you see this kind of deal, this maneuver all the time. And it really rubbed me wrong because, as we said there, what they're trying to do, they are appeasing to the conscience of the consumer, because the consumer then will think, if I buy this product, this cup, I can have a positive impact on the homeless situation. My money is going to good, right? But you kind of get sold down that line and almost gloss over the fact that the 90% is just going in the pocket of this company. And so it's a very shallow arrangement or agreement. And I understand why the charity would do it, because obviously it's better than nothing. It's good exposure for them as well, possibly. But my thing about it is, so the consumer thinks they've done a good thing. The company themselves are able to then associate themselves as being charitable, morally driven, having a positive impact. And that then validates their new range of cups. And by the way, they're supposed to be, or market themselves as being, a sustainable first company. So if you're that sustainable, you've just produced a whole new range of product for... Okay. Do you see where I'm going with that, Tom? Do I sound like the raving lunatic?
The right level
of
lunacy. Just the sort of, just a bubbling amount, nothing frothing too high. No, I completely get where you're coming from. I wonder as well if, what do they do with all the Christmas-themed cups they don't sell?
Yeah.
That was just probably something quite innocuous, but that was just something.
No, it's a good point. Yeah, I don't know. I'd imagine they'd probably just scrap the lot.
Yeah, but one could argue, there still is a donation to charity there.
There is. Yeah, and I think the way that I've tried to weigh it up in my mind is it the lesser of an evil? Would a potential customer who's bought these cups for the charitable entanglement, would they have, of their own volition, gone out and donated? I don't know. But the thing is, when you actually think about the cost of a cup and what 10% actually amounts to, it just comes off a very thin ploy at selling a product. Whereas the whole anchor is, we've created this range so we can help the charity. And that's the line, and that's what annoys me. I'd much rather, personal agreements I suppose, but if they came out and they said, we're selling these cups because we're a company, we need to make money to stay in business. Business is about profit. We need profit. But actually, we will chuck a little bit to charity. We'll give the crust off our loaf. It's a triangle situation, is that you've got the company, you've got the charity, you've got the customer. The 3 C's. The one loser out of all of this is the charity, because they're being used by both people who are gaining some kind of moral validation, lightening their load of guilt.
It's interesting how you would talk about that idea of trying to make yourself feel better, or the company kind of pat yourself on the back, we've done a good job, I feel better about myself. It's like, you see those horrible videos where it's like someone giving food to a homeless person, and it's kind of like... Yeah,
influencers.
And it's like, it's almost demeaning to that person.
Well, they've manufactured that scene, haven't they?
Yeah, they're kind of using them
for their own platform.
Yeah, basically to virtue signal, to sort of enhance their own image. It's kind of like they're being exploited. I think that's a kind of a buzzword for this particular rant about exploitation. Because do they want to be on film? Do they want that kind of pity? They'd probably just rather have some food and a bit of maybe some spare change. And it's kind of like these, homelessness now is kind of like what the charities themselves do in a weird way, where they'll have an advert and they'll find some, let's say it's clean water for little kids in Africa. Yeah. They'll find the most depraved, sorry looking child, and they'll film them, and they'll do a little story about this kid who has to walk 10 miles a day carrying water, and his sister is blind, and his dad died of malaria, and it's they're kind of exploiting this child really to pull on the heartstrings. And that's what the charities themselves do, but then they're kind of now doing that to the charities almost in a weird way, and sort of using them.
Remember years ago, you used to always have a celebrity who was the face of these charities that would be there in the village and kind of on the scene, and it's almost sacrilegious adverts. And you'd always watch those and think, this is a massive celebrity, film star. Ewan McGregor, I remember being on some. And I kind of think, you're presenting this advert asking for everyone at home to donate £2 while you've just finished wrapping up a film that's #1 blockbuster of the year. You've probably earned many, many, many millions more than you need. Could the issue not be solved? And again, it's interesting, isn't it? It's that like exploitation, that manipulation on varying levels.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you'd hope that like these celebrities that become the face of a charity do themselves donate. I mean, like there was recently over the summer there was the wildfires in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And you had Oprah and The Rock,
Yes.
two of the richest people in Hollywood. Like Oprah, I think, was the first black woman to become a billionaire, if I'm not mistaken. And The Rock, his net worth must be huge. And they had the gall to post a video asking people to donate to the cause, to like help the Hawaiians who were suffering from these terrible wildfires. And people did point out, it's like, imagine like having the nerve, a literal billionaire, to go onto like Twitter, X, sorry, and just be like, yeah, donate. I mean, she could literally donate like millions of dollars and it wouldn't put a dent. And then she's like has the nerve to like ask ordinary people to like dip into their pockets at a time when a cost of living crisis is gripping pretty much the global economy. We hear in the UK it's been bad, but it's in pretty much most countries since COVID and since the war in Ukraine. It's been awful, and they're just like, yeah, Hawaii needs you. Whoa. All right, Oprah, come on then, dish up.
It's one and the same, isn't it? Hawaii needs us all. And like you say,
short arms and deep pockets, you know? Like
yeah. And ironically, rich people, those already with established wealth, are pretty much insulated from something like a cost of living crisis because you've got, you know, the millions in the bank, you've got the earning power, you're always going to have that interest. You've got another film coming up, Oprah's got another book coming out or whatever the bloody hell she peddles on top of that.
Yeah, and like to keep on the kind of idea of celebrities in the charity world, one of the most mediocre players of our time, Jordan Henderson.
Mediocre? Jordan Henderson?
Yeah.
You're having a laugh.
No, I'm not. Come on.
He's been very lucky to remain in that England team.
Oh, 100%, yeah. Well, Southgate's got his favourites, but anyway, because he was like, obviously it's been quite a big thing in the media, is like, when he was at Liverpool, he was big on the scene with like the LGBT
He was
charities.
an advocate.
He was like I'm sure he donated himself. He was like the face.
Rainbow laces.
For all of that. Seems like, all right, you know, good lad. He obviously cares, right? He wouldn't do anything to negatively impact them. And then he moves obviously to Saudi Arabia, to Al Ettifaq. It's the same place where Gerrard's managing.
Stevie G.
But he's gone to Saudi Arabia, a country that's known for not tolerating any of that kind of thing. It does seem like a big slap in the face to all those people that he'd been advocating for. And it does make you wonder, did he genuinely ever care about the LGBT community, or was this just part of his brand, his kind of image? Because footballers, as we know, with the amount of wealth they have, they almost are expected to do some charitable things with it. Pretty much most football clubs will have some sort of foundation. I know Manchester United, they have the MU Foundation, and they like, you know, visit like sick kids in hospital and stuff, and you know, they get to meet their heroes and things like that. And that's, you know, again, a kind of a club that has the sort of millions that turns over should do things like that. But yeah, with the Jordan Henderson one, he really chose like quite specifically. It wasn't like a kind of general kind of issue, you know, like sort of dying kids. I feel is like quite a sort of general sort of standard charity thing. He really went for the specifically on the LGBT and just completely turned his back on it. And it does make you question, did Jordan ever care? If you're listening and you want to, you know, you want to come back and defend, we'll
give you that platform, Jordan.
We will give you, Jordan.
You'd have to come in person though. I wouldn't do a virtual out to side.
Or,
and you can't wear any Al Ettifaq gear.
No, if you want to fly us over to Saudi Arabia, it's not a country I can say I've ever been that keen on visiting, but it's another one to tick off.
Have we just been compromised mid-podcast?
Yes, that's exactly what's happened. Hey, I'm not the one who's been the advocate for some LGBT Stonewall Pink News charity. You know, I never claimed to be like an ally in that sense. Obviously, I don't have anything against the community, but
but you weren't an outspoken defendant. Or
exactly. Like, there's plenty of people to do that. So if I went to Saudi Arabia, I'm not compromising my morals. I'm just going there to speak with Mr. Henderson.
Absolutely, and it's a very pertinent example. And I think, as we said earlier, the scope of today's discussion isn't simply, company, charity. It's quite a wide palette, isn't it? And especially on the back of what you said there, I know Pride Month, obviously very much related to the LGBTQ community, but Pride Month has been, it just becomes preyed on, doesn't it? It's quite interesting to, it's quite interesting to watch, because Pride Month will come along. All of a sudden, that's quite a valuable minority for companies to tap into. And I remember seeing, this past couple of years, it does seem to be quite an influx with companies not openly accepting it, but just acting like vultures, really. They will all alter their logos, won't they? Incorporate the rainbow flag. You've seen adverts on TV where they are trying to position themselves as allies, which is great, but they actually aren't doing that at all. All they're trying to do is tap into a new financial demographic. And I think you can tell more than anything when Pride Month finishes and the day later the logo is back to normal. It's business as usual. It's kind of, all right, we've, pardon the pun, we've squeezed that tit dry. Now back onto the corporate slickers.
It's usually back onto whatever the next theme or movement there is. When is Pride Month? Is it June or is it July? It's like one of those summer months, isn't it?
It's in June.
So June will finish, and then it'll be on to the next one. It'll be on to some kind of general summer brand, and then it'll be back to school, and then Halloween, and etc. It was last year I went to the Pride Parade down in Brighton. That's like Brighton's the epicenter of Pride. I just went more to catch up with some friends who I hadn't seen for a few years. And it was interesting. It wasn't what I expected at all. It was like they had the big parade, but all it really was just these buses and these floats that were all corporate buses coming through. So you had the McDonald's one, and you had all these McDonald's, I assume, employees in rainbow McDonald's attire dancing around. As you can imagine, it sort of is quite flamboyant kind of thing. But McDonald's comes on, then you have the Coca-Cola one, and then it's Lloyd's TSB, and it was just this conveyor belt of all these conglomerates and corporations. And I was like, is this a pride parade, or is this just a parade of corporations? It was you had the police, the Brighton police and the fire department, and some local academy, the school. It was ridiculous. I half expected ISIS to come along with their float, or some questionable the mafia in support, because it was every single company was just represented, and there was something so consumerist about it all, and that's the other thing as well, because you get around that month, they all sell their little flags. Shoe companies, I've noticed, actually, are one of the biggest exploiters of Pride Month. Converse, Vans, they'll do their rainbow shoes, rainbow themed kind of things, and they don't really care. But that's just
it's just a product to sell. It's a popular way of just selling the product, isn't it? New packaging, same product, new packaging. And it is, I know we said that word, but sinister is the word, because to someone of that community, that flag means everything. That represents identity. That there are people that I know that are in the community, and some of the experiences they've had when they're younger have been horrendous. So to them, the flag, what that community represents, something like Pride Month, is massive. And I think in one way you'd say the world is in a good place that Pride Month is celebrated so widely, and people aren't ostracized for their choice. They're able to be who they are. But then on the other hand, it's kind of, to a point, is it so accepted and popular and mainstream these days because the mainstream has twigged, if we associate with the flag, that person might switch their banking to us. It's wrong. It's icky.
It is. It doesn't sit right at all with me. It's interesting you mentioned banking, actually, because I was doing some reading in the restricted section, and I came across a piece sort of discussing how we all remember, hopefully, the 2008 financial crash. Good year, 2008, actually, in retrospect. And basically that was caused by the banks. The banks got too greedy and basically created this massive mortgage bubble which burst.
The Big Short.
Exactly, great film.
Incredible film, love it.
Highly recommend to anyone. Christian Bale.
Housing market, wasn't it?
Steve Carell.
Yeah.
Ryan Gosling.
There's a couple other big dogs in there, aren't there? But I can't remember.
Margot Robbie has a little cameo. I remember that. Yeah, it was subprime mortgages, effectively. So the banks were just basically giving mortgages to pretty much anyone, regardless of whether or not they had a decent credit score, whether or not they would actually be able to pay it back. And then there was going to be like this quarter in 2007 where all the interest rates on these mortgages would all get hiked up, and like no one would, basically everyone would default on their mortgages. But because at that time the banks obviously had such a bad image because they basically like caused a global disaster. Like people lost their livelihoods, people lost their homes. I think people don't quite realize actually how bad the 2008 financial crash was, and it was worse than the Great Depression of 1927, the stock market crash. Basically, the banks at that point had to figure out a way to like clean up their act. And so what they've done, and I think what's been exemplified mostly in sort of a recent feud between Coutts and Nigel Farage and NatWest, and they basically admitted to denying him a bank purely for ideological reasons. They said he didn't meet the financial requirements, but that was untrue. And look, whether or not you agree or disagree with Nigel Farage's politics is irrelevant. The banks have tried to sort of align themselves with this kind of social good. I mean, I want to say it's Halifax. They introduced like pronouns on all the staff badges.
Okay.
And it was, in a way, that's kind of good. But again, it was just sort of this image, right? It's like, oh, we're going to have all our staff are going to wear pronouns on their badges so everyone feels included. We're like an inclusive bank. And they're doing that with one hand, and with the other hand, they're probably investing in artillery weapons that are being used in various wars that are being fought, because most banks invest customers' money into pretty sus areas if you actually look into it. But yeah, so basically the banks had to figure out a way to gain that trust back, to look good again in the public eye. And a lot of what that has been is banks putting themselves on the what I would deem to be the right side of history, this generally sort of more leftist, socialist, liberal view. I mean, you know, and I think LGBT, the way that's becoming more accepted, is kind of the main exemplar of. So it's actually quite a sinister thing, and all these banks now, like, and with the Nigel Farage thing, like, typified this idea that the banks are now trying to be like arbiters of social justice. And it's like, hold up, you're a bank, you're one of the most exploitative, foul industries, the most cutthroat, money is the bottom line, morally bankrupt, to use a good turn of phrase there, industries. I'd rather just bank with a bank that, you know, we're a bank, we're just here to make money and make you a bit of money as well.
I think this is it. I think, again, why the need for the facade? You know, just be upfront about it. Like, they do try and blur the public perception in terms of what people should expect from a bank, what a bank actually does. Any kind of pretense about social justice or action, with respect, you're not going to bank with someone because they're going to have this impact.
I know one person who chose their bank purely on moral grounds. It was one of my friends. Her dad banks with, it might be the cooperative or something like that. Don't quote me. I don't want to give the co-op any more publicity. Just for reference for anyone, when I lived in the Isle of Skye, I was forced to use the co-op on a weekly basis.
And he loved it.
Good grief. Like, I spent filthy amounts of money in the co-op.
And their grief was good.
I was exploited. I was the one being taken for a ride. You know, the co-op had me in the locks, in the stocks, bent over, pants down. They had me.
That's a bit graphic for the podcast, Tom.
All right. They had me naked, tied to the bed, blindfolded, dripping
while
candle
the mate
wax.
was filming. Yeah. If anyone wants to see that video, we have a Patreon. No.
So he apparently chose a bank based purely on the fact that they invest all their money into morally sound funds. You know, they'll invest in like renewable energy and, you know, social products, rather than a bunch of these banks will invest in things like oil and gas. They'll invest in ammunitions. You could, when I worked for a financial institution when I was fresh out of university, which did involve investing people's stocks, and you could kind of choose which sort of investment funds and sort of packages to go for. And you could choose green investments and things like that, which always, again, didn't sit right with me. It's kind of funny. You'd have the regular investment, right, the regular fund, and then next to it, you could select the green fund. So it's kind of like they're having both things, and that's what I think ultimately that kind of typifies what we're saying, is that like they have the kind of green fund, but they still have the non-green fund. That's still an option to invest in. So they're having their cake and they're eating it too.
So they fold, as does the banknote, and that's all they care about is the folding of that note. All morals have their value, don't they? Have their price. And I suppose, think about it from the other point of view, from the bank's point of view, or the company's. If they can at the same time drive down both of those alternative roads and make some profit,
it's a win-win.
Yeah. Come what may.
With one hand, they're planting trees and they're providing clean water to little villages in Africa, and then with the other hand, they're drilling for oil, they're loading the weapons of mercenaries and counter-terrorist organizations and guerrilla groups. And it's despicable. It just makes me sort of feel a little bit sick.
Very much so.
A bit queasy.
So what I'm curious to know then, Tom, does the end justify the means then? You know, the fact that the charity have actually gained money that, with respect, otherwise, without that association, without that product being sold and them getting the 10%, they might have had 0%.
It's an interesting point to raise, isn't it? Because, you're right. We can sit here and talk all day about how the companies don't actually care about what they're doing. It's all for purely corporate reasons, strategic element to it, and it's about effectively putting out a good public image. If I go a bit sort of Machiavellian here, you have like the sort of the public face and then the private face.
Yep.
So the public face of the company is like, we're donating money, we're supporting these causes, but then sort of behind the scenes, like I said before, they're sort of doing things that would actually undermine the very things that they claim to be supporting. As someone who doesn't believe that pure altruism actually exists, I know, controversial, not to get too Ayn Rand and libertarian on this one, which, disclaimer, I don't support that world philosophy, but she said that altruism doesn't really exist in its pure form, and it's most people, even on just like an individual scale, most people donate to charity to really make themselves also feel better. It's kind of like to make you feel better about yourself, right? But does that matter? Because, if I went out onto the street, gave like £5 to a homeless person, and I do that only really to make me feel better about myself, at the end of the day, that homeless person still has a fiver. I would say, because in my opinion, altruism doesn't exist in like a pure form, particularly at a corporate level, the ends probably do in a way justify the means. That doesn't mean we still can't complain about it and point it out for what it is.
Yeah. It's not as clear cut as a yes or a no, is it?
No, not at all.
And I think I'd be quite interested to know, anyone that's listening, if you want to let us know your thoughts on that. Does the fact that charities maybe engage with questionable companies or align themselves with these companies, does the fact they actually do then gain some money, are able to try and have a positive impact on the world, enhance their resources, does that justify the questionable means they come from? Let us know.
So what I think this really needs, some sort of long, mournful complaint, some kind of lament. Wonder what that could be. Just some sort of written piece, possibly in prose or verse, that could bitterly and sorrowfully lament this very topic. Would you happen to have any such thing, Andy?
Well, it's actually peculiar that you mention that, because I just happen to have here a Jeremiad that I wrote in preparation for the episode.
That's what I was thinking
of. And
of
course, This is Jeremiad podcast. We did promise this to the people. We are staying true to the biblical tradition of Jeremiah himself, despite not subscribing to the ways of the Lord. Anyway, so yes, I've written a little Jeremiad on the subject, and here it goes. I hope you enjoy.
Thank you.
And surely So guile their conceit, it can but lead trust astray. The angst of man, when discovered does he, the very cobwebs he hath been enwrapped in, promises nothing but misery and enrapture. Yet for most it is a thought not registered, a mind not cast, an eye not glanced. For why should such suspicion arise when this line hath been towed entire lives? This fruit that has been sowed and soon to be ripe, and how generous it doth appear, when thy freshly picked apple has been handed to you with smiles wide and smartly fixed ties. But to bite the fruits of such labour is to play into the hands of our great enslavers. For all is not as it seems, as they strive so desperately to convince you of their means, when all they mean truthfully is deceit. And by donating the fruit they stand to gain multiple purchases off you, forsaking all earthly value or honour we thought we stood so strong for. A bedrock built on thorns cannot provide rejuvenating rest. It stands only to spike, to pierce the very flesh of mankind. Thank you.
That was incredible. I was transported back somewhat to the great days of the Jeremiads there. I sort of just closed my eyes, and I hope the listeners did too. I just sort of drifted away there. It's almost like my consciousness was uprooted and transplanted to a different time and dimension. That was brilliant.
Yeah, thank you. I try to just accurately convey the feelings that we've been talking about. You know, the metaphor of the apple? Effectively, it's a poisoned apple that, they've...
Well, I was getting sort of like, kind of Adam and Eve as well, kind of vibes.
Yeah,
with the
that's
forbidden
probably a
fruit
connotation.
kind of thing.
Yeah. So I think that's probably enough exploitation for us today. And hopefully, dear listener, you don't feel we've exploited your ears too much. But if so, and you wish to take revenge, or if not, and you feel aligned with us, you feel ready to mount the streets pitchfork in hand, which we would not advocate, of course, then let us know. Get in touch. In cases of companies associating with charitable causes and charities gaining even it be a meagre amount through such association, does the end justify the means? That's what we're curious to know. What do you think? Similarly, are there any heinous examples of the kind of things that we've discussed today that you've been aware of recently? Something you could maybe enlighten us about? In your hometown, is there some big uproar going on? Is there another thinly veiled marketing scheme you've been aware of?
I want to know, have we made anyone doubt themselves? Are you a charitable person? Are you a regular donatee or donate to charity? And you've thought, wow, am I actually just doing this for myself? Is it purely just to make myself feel good? Do you work for a company and you've been firmly behind the idea that that company wants to bring about positive change, but maybe your eyes have now been opened and you realize that you're just a ploy in a corporate scheme, a pawn upon the chessboard of industry? Let us know.
Or do you think we're both just rampant lunatics that need to spend our time better?
It's quite possible.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.